Good morning. I'm Fred Camback, Managing Editor for The Advocate. Thank you for joining us for this live stream Baton Rouge Mayor's Forum featuring the top 6 candidates for the top leadership spot in East Baton Rouge Parish.
And I'm Natasha Williams, anchor reporter for Louisiana Public Broadcasting. LPB has a 45-year history of contributing to the democratic process, and we are glad to partner with The Advocate on today's forum.
Let's introduce the candidates joining us tonight. Incumbent Mayor-President Sharon Weston Broome, former State Representative Steve Carter, local businessman Jordan Piazza, local attorney E Eric Guirard, State Representative Denise Marcelle, and Metro Councilman Matt Watson.
The candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to questions from a panel of journalists. Joining us today is Terry Jones with The Advocate and anchor and managing editor Andre Morrow with Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Today we'll attempt to cover a lot of territory as we delve into issues that are important to the future of this city. A drawing was used to determine the order of questioning and the order of the closing statement. We'll discuss law enforcement, COVID response, race relations, and much more. So let's start with our first question, which goes to Mayor Broome. I'll turn it over to Andre Morrow.
All right, thank you, Fred, very much. Mayor Broome, this year Baton Rouge saw protests over racial discrimination in policing, and the homicide rate is on pace to be well over last year's. If reelected, what, if anything, would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge?
Well, first of all, you know, against the backdrop of the civil unrest that is taking place across the country, I will tell you that we have been on the forefront of addressing many issues that people are talking about now. In 2017, we implemented use of force policies. We did de-escalation policies. We armed our police officers with body cameras, and we continue to move towards 21st century policing standards. We've equipped them with new automobiles. We've stood up a real-time crime center. Now, what has happened in 2018 and in 2019, the crime rate actually was going down in the city of Baton Rouge. What's different in 2020? COVID-19. And if you look at cities across the nation, small, large, no matter what, you will see that there is a trend of an uptick in crime across America. I will tell you, when it comes to race relations, we must get out of our corners and focused on shared goals and not let the naysayers be the ones that continue the narrative of us against them.
Mayor, thank you for that. Next, Mr. Carter, and same question. If elected, what, if anything, would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge?
If you don't mind, I'd like to stand up and give the answer if I could.
That is fine.
And thank you for that question. You know, the main thing I would do would, since we eliminated BRAVE, homicides have increased 40%. So we need to take a long, hard look at BRAVE and attempt to bring it back. The other thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that we support and encourage and make sure that the police are in a position where they can do their job. One thing that we have a problem with is that we don't have enough police. We need to fully staff the police force. The other thing that we need to do, if possible, is attempt to try to give the police a pay raise and ensure that they have all of the equipment that they need to do their job. One thing that we need to try to do and make sure is that every citizen needs to feel safe, they need to feel secure, and the main thing that needs to happen is they need to make sure that they're respected. I think that's a problem we have, and that we do not bring people together to unify them, to make them understand how important it is that we work together to solve our problems.
All right, Mr. Carter, thank you for that. And next, same question goes to Mr. Piazza. If elected, what, if anything, would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, you know, I think that policing is something we must address, and we must address promptly. While crime may be down from 2017, it's because 2017 was a record year of crime in East Baton Rouge Parish. But what's alarming is that we've seen over 95 homicides this year in East Baton Rouge Parish, 85 of which approximately are in the city of Baton Rouge. But more alarming is there's about 200 of non-fatal shootings in the city of Baton Rouge alone. So We know that based off of a recent study that was done, that there's an extra, $8 to $12 million in the BRPD budget because of inefficiency. So we need to take some of that funding and we need to fund the police. We need to give them a raise because they haven't gotten a raise in over 13 years. And so we need to give them a raise, and we also need to get more officers on the street. I heard recently that we didn't need more officers on the street, but I looked at some FBI statistics this weekend and looked at Birmingham and Richmond, Virginia, who are comparable in population. And each of those cities have less crime but more police officers. So we've got to get more officers on the street. We got to do more community policing. But if we're really going to solve this and recruit new businesses and industries, our public has to know they're safe. And the way to address inequalities is ensuring that that everyone across the parish has equal opportunity and equal safety. So safety is something we must address, and we must address promptly.
Thank you, Mr. Piazza. And now the same question to you, Mr. Guirard. If elected, what, if anything, would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge?
Thank you, Andre. E Eric Guirard, and I want people to go to fusetherouge.org because it's kind of like Smokey and the Bandits here. You got a long way to go, but a short time to get there. So we only have a minute and a half to talk about these things. But I would do something out of the box. My whole campaign is kind of out of the box. We have to have new imaginative thinking in all of our problems. And in this regard, we have what I would establish getting rid of the city police and the sheriffs and combining them into a new entity. We're going to call it the Guardian Rouge. So no more green, no more blue. It's going to be a new red or kind of a hip, cool maroon color. Red cars, red uniforms, a whole new mentality, because we need something as much as substantive, we need symbolic work here too. So I want to see community policing on steroids. I want to see us putting small substations all around the city, even in the worst, and especially in the worst neighborhoods. I want the police to get out of the cars, onto the bikes, onto the horses, onto the any kind of way they can get to be a friend of the city, of the people. The people need to see that the Guardian Rouge is their friend. They're not policemen, they're guardians. And so that's an important mindset. I want to be better paid, better trained. I want them to be martial arts experts so we can maybe stop some of these lethal force problems that we seeing around the country. So folks, remember, if you want to learn more about that, go to fusetherouge.org, and we need to establish a new police force, the Guardian Rouge.
All right, thank you, Mr. Guirard. Ms. Marcelle? If elected, what would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. Let me start out by saying when I was on the Metro Council, I passed the ordinance that all Baton Rouge City police officers have the body cameras. The funds had not been implemented, but it was passed before this administration came on, so it was a lot of hard work. But what I found is that you have to bring people together. We had a committee with the DAs, the public defenders, members of the Metro Council, and I chaired that committee. I think that everyone in Baton Rouge know that we have a crime problem. The question begins, how do we solve that problem? And one of the things that I think would be important is community policing. I think we have to have more community policing. Police can't just ride around in their cars. And I also believe that we have to pay good policemen. I think that we have to increase their pay. If you want great people working for you, you always increase the salary. So I think those are some of the things that I would do initially, and then I would stop the crimes that are happening that are senseless, like the Plank Road parties that was there, and they let that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I went out there and talked to them. So sometimes you just got to go talk to the people and figure out what's going on with them and let them know that you're not going to stand for it. And I think the elected officials need to stand up to the crime as well as the police. It's not just the police's problem, it's all of our problems, and I think we can do that together.
Thanks, Ms. Marcelle. And now, Mr. Watson, what, if anything, would you do to change policing in Baton Rouge if elected?
For starters, thanks to the Advocate and Louisiana Public Broadcasting for hosting this. Thank you for the question. What I would do under my administration is I would create my Assistant Chief Administrative Officer position. One of many would be over public safety. That person would be a liaison to our fire departments, EMS, and the sheriff, but primarily over BRPD because crime has gotten out of hand. We can pick and choose different crimes that have gone down over the last 4 years, but when we're talking about 400 some odd folks that have lost their lives, I don't think their families think that crime is on the way down. So we have to address that problem. So you take the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer over Public Safety, myself, proper leadership from BRPD, and go out and meet with folks and start in 7802 and 7805, but certainly crime is not limited to just those areas. Go to those areas, speak directly with the hardworking men and women who live there, tell them what they already know, the prevalence of crime and the high instances of crime in their neighborhood, and explain what best practices in policing that found around the country can do to reduce crime in their area and get their buy-in so that we can reduce crime and stop the victimization of our community that's been so prevalent over the last 3.5+ years.
Mr. Watson, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Carter, next question.
Yes, sir.
We'll start with you. Voters in the southeastern part of the parish last year voted to create the new city of St. George, but a lawsuit has largely stalled that incorporation. What approach would you take to the lawsuit and to St. George's incorporation if you were elected?
Good question. Thank you, Terry. You know, St. George, they were told what they needed to do if they wanted to incorporate. It started out with a school issue, and they said you need to devise and develop your independent school district. Well, they did all of the things that they were supposed to do. They got the petition, they voted, and they decided that they wanted to separate. Well, here's the situation. Obviously, we have a lawsuit. My problem with our city is we're not unified. We always have divisiveness going on. We have problems. I will not be a part of the lawsuit. I think what we need to do is to sit down with the people of St. George, talk to them, say, what are your needs? Where can we come to common ground? The mayor's office would also sit down and say, these are my concerns, these are my issues, and we need to sit and communicate. We don't communicate enough with people. The situation with St. George is, if it occurs, they're going to be part of our parish. And so we need to make sure that we all work together within the parish and make sure that we all understand each other's needs and come to a solution with it without us continually being divisive and continually having problems with that particular subject. It needs to end.
Mr. Piazza, same question to you. If elected mayor, how would you approach St. George's incorporation and the handling of the lawsuit?
Yeah, I think something that's got to be remembered is this started back, St. George is just another one of example when you look at the city of Central, the city of Zachary, that broke off because education is an issue in East Baton Rouge Parish. And it's something that we failed to address, and if we had addressed it a couple of decades ago, St. George might not have started the talks of breaking off. But I don't believe that as it's best interest of a mayor-president to personally sue their constituents who voted within their legal rights. Now, does the mayor-president need to ensure that they have the right process and they do it accordingly? Absolutely. However, we must work together and not have a combative divisiveness mentality when we want to speak into the issues that they address. We know that that our city ranks 20 out of 150 cities in budget per capita. But in the same poll, we rank 138th and 150 out of quality city services. Over the last 4 years, our city parish has had a budget of over $4 billion when you include some of these grants. So we've gotten so much money and gotten so little for it. And I think it's just another example of what the folks are saying, that they think they can run a more efficient government than the city of Baton Rouge is doing. So I think we have to work with these folks because they are our neighbors, they are our friends, and we have to ensure that, since they voted, we have to respect the American vote. And we have to work with those folks and give them what they've asked for because they have voted.
Mr. Guirard, if elected mayor, how would your administration approach St. George and the lawsuit?
Yeah, people need to go to fusetherouge.org once again to see a full explanation. But in a nutshell, education is the driving force here. That's why it started. And let's not fool ourselves. And in my plan, I have a thing called Fund It, Don't Run It for education. I want to take all the money in the parish, divide it between all the students in the parish, and give each student a credit stipend to go and shop via the free enterprise system, via capitalism, whatever school they want, totally privatize the whole parish. That would end the problem with St. George right now because that is the driving force. But I have a problem with that whole St. George concept because, frankly, that's 17,000 people voted for that. And that's 17,000 people dictating what happens to essentially 500,000 people. I think the city should have fought that harder. I think it could have been beaten. And I really have a problem with the way some of the lines were drawn in the whole St. George program to get it passed. You can see full swaths of squares that have been changed from the first time they tried to the second time. Why? Frankly, because there were black voters in those areas. And so I think it was gerrymandered to a large extent. So I'm not a big St. George fan. We should sit down with the St. George people and say, look, I understand your difficulties, I understand you felt left out, I understand the taxation issues. But come sit with me. Give me a year. Give me just a year or two to solve your problems. And I think we can come together as one people because I'm about fusing the Rouge. We got to come together. We've got to be one city, not two divided cities.
Representative Marcelle, same question to you. How would you approach St. George and the lawsuit?
Well, first of all, the lawsuit has been filed, and a judge will make the decision on how that will be handled. But from my perspective, if I was the mayor-president, certainly I would sit down with the leaders of St. George and talk about the legacy cost and the infrastructure that we already have that they certainly have to pay for. Any bonds that we've already committed to, those things have to be worked out. I do believe, however, that they should not have broken away from Baton Rouge. I thought we were better together. But I also have to agree with E Eric Guirard that I think that there should have been more work on the front end. When I was on the council, I worked with Mr. William Daniels for us to try to have a lot of those areas annexed in. I did not see that happening after I left the council. I think more should have been done to annex people in to the city because it is gerrymandered the way that they've done it. And so I would leave that to the courts, and whatever the courts decide, I would certainly abide by that in terms of working with St. George, because we are one parish, and that's the bottom line. We're one parish, and I certainly work with them.
Councilman Watson, how would your administration handle the St. George Incorporation and that lawsuit?
Well, we are one parish, and we're remaining one parish. No one is breaking away because they weren't ever part of the city of Baton Rouge in the first place. They looked to the state for the rules and regulations on how they could proceed to get the number of signatures on a petition to get on the ballot, and the people voted. One can make the argument that only so many people voted, but voter apathy has never been something to discredit an election. You'll hear the mayor say that she's got the right to file the lawsuit. Well, just because you've got the right to do it doesn't necessarily mean you should. We should work together with the folks who are in St. George, folks that they're going to hire as representatives to work through their planning commission, put together their unified development code, things of that nature, and their budget, to figure out what we can do to have an amenable, equitable path forward for the entire parish, because there's going to have to be some not just kumbaya moments with the folks with St. George. There's going to be some tough negotiations over what sort of things they're going to have to pay for. And there's going to be some things that I haven't heard them mention that they're going to have to address. Now, we do need to work together. I've never been a party of this lawsuit. I wouldn't continue the lawsuit, but I don't think that, when the mayor-president is a private citizen and continues to move on with the case, I don't think she'll drop the case. I don't think Mary Olive will drop the case. We need to prove to Judge Morvant we're making progress so that he'll say, we don't have any reason to be here.
And Mayor Broome, yours is a little bit different. Why do you think that your approach to the lawsuit and to St. George's Incorporation is the best one?
Well, I know my approach is the best one. You know why? Because it is about responsible leadership. As the mayor-president of the city and parish, make no mistake about it, I love everybody, whether your zip code is in Scotlandville or in Shenandoah. But it is my responsibility as the leader and CEO of this city to make sure that any potential breakaway city, as the proponents of St. George have proceeded with, can give me a firm plan on how they're going to stand up a city of 86,000 people. How are you going to pay for that? Will there be an increase in taxes? And the truth be told, before we started down this path of even an election, I met with them to find out what were their concerns. Then after the election, I asked them, come to my office, let's sit down, tell me what you want us to do as city parish government and what you plan to do. They did not give me a firm plan. So I owed it not only to the citizens who are part of that area, but to the citizens who are in East Baton Rouge Parish who did not have an opportunity to vote to get a firm plan. Let me put it like this. If you were an architect or a developer, you wouldn't build a house without a plan. If you were trying to go from here to Missouri, you need some type of map. You need some type of indication of how you're going to get there. The litigation, the legal path is certainly prescribed by the Louisiana state legislature and says that the CEO has the authority to ask for a firm plan forward. And that's what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Next question, we begin with Mr. Piazza. And from one emotional topic to another that's also bewildering, the coronavirus pandemic has caused state and local leaders to implement many restrictions on residents and businesses, including a mandate that everyone wear masks in public places. How should the city parish have handled this response to the virus? Mr. Piazza.
I think the city parish should have shifted more responsibility to the individuals instead of the businesses. We've created a mentality of big government where they want to dictate on how we're going to live, what our future's going to be like, and when we can work and what we can do. That's not sustainable for our future, and we're seeing what that's caused, because now you see where the state unemployment budget has fallen below $100 million, and so if they can't get federal relief, they have to find some funds elsewhere, or employer taxes will increase to over 60%, which is alarming, and it's unsustainable for businesses. So I think what big government has done by interfering has caused a bigger problem that we didn't see, and we also know that revenues are down for the city because of this. And interestingly enough, the New York Times said a few weeks ago that sales revenues will be down for the city parish, but the chief administrative officer didn't see where he got the numbers out, and then last week a report comes out where they acknowledge that figures are down. And so I think what we've got to do is we've got to lift the restrictions. There's a way to open that we've seen worldwide where you can open your economy, protect the vulnerable and the elderly, and still do business. And we have to do that because we've shown that COVID has shown us that we have a very fragile economy because we're very dependent on few industries that have been shuttered by this, and we cannot continue that way. So we've got to let our people get back to work. We have to open businesses and lift the restrictions and remove the politics from this, because that's all this is a political move to try and keep people at home and benefit themselves for election years. And it's unfortunate because as a small business owner, I felt what it's like to have been shuttered, and it's not a good feeling. And no one else, and especially those folks in government, have felt what it's like to not get paid or not to have an opportunity to provide for your employees.
All right, thank you, Mr. Piazza. Mr. Guirard, how should the city parish have handled the response to the virus?
They should have stood up more strongly to the state and the feds, in my opinion. I reference a book, Indisputable Truths About COVID-19 and Lockdowns by Alex Berenson. He's a New York Times reporter, so no conservative bastion there. I think it's been a mistake from the get-go the way it's been approached. There were 9 states that didn't lock down, and there aren't people dying in the streets. There was the whole country of Sweden that never locked down. And again, no people were dying in the streets there. Are there deaths? Indisputably. There's 200,000 deaths in America. Latest study comes out saying maybe 1/3 of those might not be COVID-19 related. So there's 7,500 deaths every day in America. 600,000 die from cancer. We need to take perspective more than anything. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be careful because it is a deadly disease, but I think we have to have common sense. We have to approach Americans and say, look, you're free-thinking, legal, adult Americans, and we should not treat everybody like children. You should have common sense approaches to these things, and that's what they've done in these other states. Look at Florida. They're completely wide open now. The coronavirus with the new rules on bars that came out yesterday, just nonsensical. The virus doesn't stop at the state line of Florida. The virus doesn't stop when it gets to be 11 o'clock in a bar. We need to treat American citizens like the free citizens that we are, and we need to change our whole mentality of the way we approach these problems.
All right, Mr. Guirard. Ms. Marcelle, how should the city parish have handled the response to the virus?
Well, first of all, let me say that I have no problem with Mask Up Louisiana, because I think it protects the most vulnerable population, the elders, and the people who are ill in our communities. There are some things that I think could have been done differently, or I would have done differently. And one of those things would have been when the COVID testing started, I would have focused more on the communities, the inner city communities, of getting those tests out. It was a lot of people, young people, and I have a personal experience where my grandson went in, had the symptoms, tried to get tested. They wouldn't test him because of the age. And so some of those things have to be looked at and handled differently. That's what I think about the COVID. And finally, he was tested like maybe 3 weeks later, but look at all the people he had come in contact with that he may have infected because they did not test him early on. So one of the first things I said to the mayor-president is let's get more testing in the inner cities for COVID and not have all these obstacles in the way, and that's what I would have done differently.
Thank you, Ms. Marcelle. And Mr. Watson, same question to you. How should the city parish have handled the response to the virus?
Well, for starters, I want to reach out to everyone who's been impacted by the disease. It's horrible. Folks have been hospitalized, and we've lost lives by this. What I would have done differently is I would have brought Dr. Godby, the state's preeminent expert on COVID-19. Of course, I would have meetings with Dr. Godby, but I would have brought Dr. Godby to the podium so that Dr. Godby could explain to folks what the reasons are to mask up and ask people to cooperate and understand what benefits they're going to get from masking up rather than put a mandate out. Because I think when you put a mandate out and you put out a social media piece where you could text to turn in your friends and neighbors on if they're not wearing a mask, that you get a pushback that you wouldn't have gotten had you come out with a more cooperative and an understanding and a medically based, understanding of why we need to act a certain way to move forward, because we certainly don't want to have another lockdown. The lockdown that we had and the impact, especially on bars, which a couple council members and I put together something last week to hold a special meeting on Wednesday to be able to open the bars because our numbers are down. The mayor saw that email, and she put out something yesterday that she's going to go open the bars, but council will be voting on Wednesday to do so. We've got a lot of people who have been suffering. We need to do the best we can to keep people safe, but keep our economy moving.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Mayor Broome, looking back, how would you change anything with how the city parish handled the response to the virus?
Let me just say that I am very proud of how my administration, our partners, responded to a global pandemic. I've been describing my season in office as transformative leadership in trying times. From the time I entered office in 2017, we had a traumatic 2016. Who would have ever thought that as we were coming into 2020 that we would be hit in the face with a global pandemic? But I didn't stop. I stood up to this pandemic to make sure that the health and well-being of our citizens was addressed. So when we didn't get money from the federal government nor the state, I worked with our medical partners here. All of our hospitals worked with me, gave me data, and then we stood up with the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, the first drive-through center testing site in this parish, which was noted around the country. You know why? Because many people didn't have that opportunity. And from there, we continued to let data drive our decisions. I think the mask mandate was a step in the right direction. And you know what? It was encouraged and affirmed from the president's task force. Our numbers were getting out of hand, and they encouraged that as a next step. Very proud of our medical community, our first responders, everyone who has helped us respond. And our prayers continue to go out for those that we lost and who have been challenged by COVID-19.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Carter, how should the city parish have handled the response to the virus?
Well, thank you, Andre. That's a very interesting question, simply because it's gotten very political. And any decision that you make, you're going to be, some people think it's good, some people think it's bad. The interesting thing about it is that the virus has nobody that it either eliminates or goes to. It's out there, and we don't really know exactly how it happened or what we can do to solve the problem. So I think that we need to look at it as two-pronged. One is safety, which I think that the mask is something that has helped. I think that it's data-driven, and I think that the doctors and what have you that have been involved in it are telling us the right things to do. But on the other side of the coin, we have a problem with businesses. And we've got to use common sense. But common sense sometimes, when you're young, you don't listen to common sense. You go out thinking that, I'm not going to get the virus, and I'm healthy and I'm in pretty good shape. So we needed to protect the businesses a little bit more than what we did. And in doing that, I think that you need to make sure that you hit a happy median. Businesses have really struggled, and we've got to find some way to get them back on their feet. And I think that the way it's been handled is not that bad, But I do think that businesses suffered, and I do think that we need to make sure that we get back on our feet with businesses and help all businesses have an opportunity to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
All right, next question. We're going to start with you, Mr. Guirard. The Metro Council recently rejected a proposed $5 million settlement with the family of Alton Sterling, who we all know was killed due to a confrontation with the Baton Rouge Police Department 4 years ago. Do you agree or disagree with that decision, and why?
Okay. Again, fusetherouge.org, and people get a further explanation from me on this and other topics. I would tend to agree with that, and the reason I would is because I think it would be good to have a trial, frankly. I think that we need to flush that out. I think there's too many facts have been floated around. People are hearing too many things on the street, too many things on the internet. I'm a lawyer, so I mean, I want to see all the true evidence, and so I want to see the facts on both sides come out, and I think that would be good for the city, because that way it gets fully flushed out in a court of law where there's evidentiary rules, and so you know what happened, what didn't happen, and should the punishments have been appropriate. Was the fact that the states and the state and the feds chose not to prosecute, I mean, did that make sense? And of course, there's a different standard at a civil court than in a criminal court. You know, it's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a lower standard. So there is a risk to the city parish that you could lose more money, but I don't think so. I think it's far outweighed by the progress you can get from talking to the people openly and candidly, instead of just throwing money at a problem and hoping it goes away. That's why I want to get the Guardian Rouge. I wanted to get that new police force, because I think that's going to be the key. You combine the sheriff and the city into one new entity, and all of a sudden we have something we can be proud of, something that actually helps citizens, and citizens can look to the guardians to protect them instead of being adversaries.
Representative Marcelle, same question to you. Do you agree or disagree with the council's decision to reject that settlement?
Well, let me start out by saying I was on the front line when it happened with Alton Sterling. It was in my district, and it was chaos, and it was a tough time for our city. I believe that it's really going on, much too long. The question becomes, how much do they settle the case for if they settle it? I believe that they did not get this out of the thin air, the council members that presented it. It's my understanding that there was a mediator that came in, and that was the suggestion of the mediator. My question is, why would we pay a mediator to mediate something, give us a suggestion, and then we walk away from that suggestion? We could have just kept on going and went to trial like E Eric Guirard said. We could just go to trial. If we weren't going to take the advice of the mediator, it just was kind of senseless to me. So I don't think that they pulled that number randomly out of the sky, but I also believe that this needs to be settled, this needs to be behind us, and we need to heal from this.
Now, Councilman Watson, you voted on this issue, so why did you vote against the settlement?
For starters, it wasn't a settlement, it was an offer of judgment. The difference between the two is a settlement is something that you come into contact with the attorneys or Alton Sterling's heirs, and you've come to an agreement over a dollar amount. This was almost like, I won't violate anyone else on the council's, confidentiality with their attorney by talking about, how perhaps they came up with that dollar amount. But that was a dollar amount thrown out as an offer of judgment that could have easily been denied or refused by the attorneys and Alton Sterling's heirs. The dollar amounts that they've asked for have ranged anywhere from $7 to $20 million. So to think that they would go with $5 million is a guess by anyone's statement. We also have the former officer Blaine Salamone has a trial currently going on where we don't know how the courts are going to determine how much responsibility financially he may have going forward on this. So I think coming up with that dollar amount, not having as much information going forward as Mr. Guirard had mentioned, there's a lot of information that wasn't made privy to council until just hours before the vote you're talking about happened. Of course, it's available now, but we're having difficulty getting really good information, and I would think that going to a trial would benefit both sides tremendously.
And Mayor Broome, do you agree or disagree with the council's decision to reject that settlement?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that the council has a legal staff. It's called the Parish Attorney's Office. And I would think that they would be working hand in hand with the parish attorney's office to come up with a reasonable outcome for this settlement. It definitely needs to be settled. I have no objection to the amount that was proposed, but what we have here is the need for our council to coalesce around a goal of settling this issue so we can move our community forward. Indeed, there is still healing that is taking place around the hurt and the trauma of 2016. So I would hate to see us take this into 2021 with the new council. It needs to be dealt with.
And Mr. Carter, lastly, same question. Do you agree or disagree with the council's decision to reject that settlement?
Thank you, Terry. My thoughts and prayers also go out to the Sterling family. This was a tragedy, and it is sad for our community for this to have occurred. However, with so many unanswered questions, you can hear everybody here who has spoken, we don't have all the answers. And I think it's important for the answers to come out. And the only way the answers can come out is through a trial. So I would think that the best way for us to solve this problem is through a trial, to hear everyone testify, and as quickly as we can get this to trial and resolved is very important for our city, because here we have already talked about this situation that's divided our city, St. George that's dividing our city, and everywhere we turn around we have a problem. And that's not the way to solve all the problems within our city, because Lord knows with crime, with flooding, and all the other things that we have that are going on, this does not help solve our problems. Our problems are unity. Our problems are working together, understanding each other's feelings, and making sure that we work together to ensure that this is the very best possible community that we can possibly have.
Terry, you forgot me.
You forgot.
Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jordan. Yeah, so final question to you. Do you agree or disagree?
So I don't think it's fair for anyone to make judgment. I mean, who are we to cast judgment on if it should be settled or not when we have a justice system that is designed to do just that? And while some may feel that justice doesn't always prevail, we have to believe in the system because that's what's in our Constitution. And I believe, as Mr. Guirard said earlier, all the facts have not been disclosed to everyone. So I can't say whether we should or should not have settled, but I think when you shift those type of decisions to our Metro Council and to our government to make settlements, it's very dangerous because there's a lot of other settlements out there that haven't been funded yet, and so we shouldn't hold that liability until a court deems it our responsibility. We have to ensure that there is law and order, and the folks that enforce that law and order have to know that we're going to rely on the justice system, and if the justice system has failed in the past, our residents and constituents have to believe that the justice system will help in the end. But I do not believe it's the responsibility of the Metro Council or the Mayor-President's office to make a decision on that, because at the end of the day, it needs to be like treated as any other case would be, which would be in the justice system. And so I think that's for the courts to decide, and I don't think anyone else is qualified to make that decision without seeing all the evidence.
Well, that ends round one. In our next round, we'll ask different questions of each candidate. First up, Representative Marcelle.
All right, Representative Marcelle, what is one specific measure you would propose to boost Baton Rouge's economy?
To increase the economy?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things I would do would be to go out to different companies and solicit them to come here. I don't think that we can sit on our hands and wait for a company to decide to relocate to Baton Rouge. I believe that we have to go out and find those people and bring them here. One of the other things that I would do is we talk about North Baton Rouge all the time and the crime. You know, you have to look at the underlying issues that causes the poverty, because any company is not just going to want to come in when you have those types of issues. So you got to address blight, you got to address crime in these areas, and then you have to go out and incentivize businesses to relocate here. There are many ways to do that. One of the companies that we recently thought was going to come to North Baton Rouge to Cartana Mall was Amazon, and that didn't happen. I would have been at the table talking to them, making sure that we did something with Cartana Mall, right? And I'm understanding that there may be still some conversations, but I think there's a lot of missed opportunities when we don't go out and find the companies to come into our communities and make the economy better. And so saying that, you've got to address some other issues. You've got to address the crime and the poverty, and you have to lift the people up out of poverty in order to get that done.
Okay, in this round, each of these questions is different. This one will come from me to Mr. Watson. Would you keep Murphy Paul as the police chief of Baton Rouge?
Well, I won't make the same mistake that the current mayor did in running, when she was running for office, saying she was going to remove Carl Dabity. Murphy Paul, for all of his failures, is a civil servant, and he's protected by civil service. So I couldn't go in and remove him or fire him without cause.
Mayor, would you like to respond to that?
I certainly would like to respond to that. You know, first of all, Murphy Paul is a stellar police chief. And secondly, when I ran in 2016, you may recall that there was a hue and cry from the citizens of our community in terms of policing and wanting change and wanting reform, and leadership was part of that reform.
I don't think they wanted the murder rate to be as high as you've let it get.
There's a rebuttal and a question. So.
Yeah, and I got a rebuttal for that too.
No, that's okay, we're done.
No? Okay.
All right, Mayor Broome, next question is for you. You've had a contentious relationship with the Baton Rouge Police Union, which has criticized your leadership. Do you need to repair that relationship in order to promote the changes that you want to see in the police department going forward?
Well, let me start by saying this. You know, I have an open door policy. I'm accessible. I'm a communicator. And I've done that from the very beginning, whether it has been the Baton Rouge Police Union, the Firefighters Union, or anyone. I make myself available. But when you have a organization like the Baton Rouge Police Union that is putting up disparaging billboards about our city and our community, it makes you question their motivation. Now, I'm at the table talking to them right now. Have we had any resolution towards some of our issues? I believe we've come close, but we still have distance to go. And so, you know, I believe that you have to be communicative with all people who are involved in this process. And they are some of the people involved in the process.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Next question to Mr. Carter. You've talked about rededicating taxes for the library system and BREC to fill funding gaps in the city-parish government. Given past support for BREC and library taxes at the polls, how would you convince voters to support changing where the money does go?
Very good question. The problem that we have is we talk about dollars, and we talk about the fact that we need to increase the pay of the police. We talk about a number of things that are going to take dollars. Flooding, for instance, is going to take dollars. Anything that we talk about trying to improve, we have to find dollars. With $1 billion budget, there's got to be some dollars in there that we can try to restructure and make sure that they're used in the proper ways to improve the quality of life of the citizens, because the citizens are taxpayers and they're paying for us to provide them the services that are necessary. So you've got to be creative, you've got to be innovative, you've got to be bold. I know I'm not going to make the library happy, but I want to look and see, where are you using your dollars? How are you staffed? And make sure that if they have dollars available, from what you understand, they've got a sizable surplus. The same thing with BREC. They do a great job. I'm not knocking what they do, but are there dollars that are available that we can better use to service our community? And that's what I want to do. I want to go look. I want to look at the budget. I want to look at all the departments. I want to see where we can economize and do a better job, because we have needs. And all of the needs that we have take money. And we've got to find additional dollars to service those needs for the citizens of the parish.
All right, Mr. Piazza, next question to you. What would be your top flood prevention measure to pursue, and how would you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Terry. And preventative maintenance is just that. I mean, the flood occurred in 2016. Here we are in 2020, and I know in July we got some heavy rain, and parts of the parish saw some flooding. And incidentally, that posed some problems within some residents. You know, they had some arguments going on, and that's terrible, because the city did a disservice to these folks to preventively clean the canals and ensure that we were maintaining these floodways to ensure that the flooding doesn't occur. So we've gone 4 years and spent dollar after dollar on studies, and now we have a plan. But guess what? The next window is going to come out is it's going to, as Carter said, it's going to cost money. We don't need more taxes around here. We need more taxpayers. People are leaving the city day in and day out, and it's because of things like this. They are tired of our city government increasing the budget while the residents decrease and not getting the services for it. So as Carter said, I've looked at the budget in detail for months now, and there's a lot of inefficiencies in it, and that's why you saw CATS this week. A study came out where the union for the transportation is complaining that CATS misuses its funding. Point being is that there's funding in there to address all these problems, but we have no preventative maintenance program. DPW is understaffed. They only get called when there's problems, not when there's, hey, great job. We know there's a lot of issues in those departments, but they have to have resources, and not just at time of elections. Conveniently, a lot of things are seeming to get done this year. It's because there's an election coming up. Just like when John Bell ran, he got a lot done right before his election. But after, nothing gets done. That's why the lakes are sitting stagnant, although they've all promised millions and millions. I understand that things take time, but let me tell you something. We've got the money and resources, and to be the capital city of the great state of Louisiana and have these problems is preposterous, in my opinion.
May I respond to
Yes,
that?
you have 30
You know, the city of Baton Rouge, prior to election year, has a scheduled preventative maintenance schedule to deal with drainage issues. But as you've seen, many of our scientists and climatologists have said, what we're dealing with right now are showers on steroids. You know, if you look 20 years ago to what was happening as it relates to weather, and now, total different change. And so just like our budgets weren't designed to embrace a global pandemic, many of our systems weren't designed for showers on steroids. But I'm very proud of the work that we've done in terms of our stormwater master plan that's laying a path forward, as well as our 5 tributary project that is going to transform drainage and mitigate flooding.
All right. Next question, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Guirard, this question: do you think Baton Rouge should rename streets named after Confederate generals?
Yeah, I think the best approach to that, and not only streets. I mean, there's buildings. I mean, there's buildings all over LSU and governmental buildings. So I think all those, it should be taken together. Not just. I think streets shouldn't be separated out. I think we should, as a parish, as a people, sit down and make decisions about all of those. And some of the people who they've been named after are more problematic than others. Some, after their tenure as Civil War generals, went on to do good things for the community. Like General Lee went on to be the president of Washington and what became Washington and Lee. So there are exceptions to it, but I would say, as a rule, there's going to be, I would say, a number of them probably should be changed. But I would rather see an overall basic approach where everybody sits together, and it's not just the city council making that decision. But I would like to see a broad cross section of the city and the parish making that decision.
Thank you.
Representative Marcelle, what would be your top traffic improvement project, and how would you fund it?
Top traffic improvement? Well, let me start by saying we definitely have some traffic woes here in Baton Rouge. I was on the Transportation Committee at the House of Representatives, where I worked to help to get the Washington Street exit done, the new exit on the bridge now. I think we've got to have a public-private partnership and certainly redo the bridge, and I think that will eliminate some of our traffic woes. However, I do believe that we can also add the bump project on Airline Highway, so that when we have these major accidents where people are stuck bumper to bumper in traffic, they can have a way to go around it. I just fear that with our traffic woes in Baton Rouge, when they have another wreck, at some point somebody's going to be ill and can't get to the hospital and die. So it's a matter of life and death to me that we straighten out the traffic woes we have in Baton Rouge. And certainly, the rapid transit from here to New Orleans, I support that as well. I think many of those things, we don't have one. It's not one thing to solve our problems. We have been behind so long. I don't know what our representatives were doing not to help us out with our streets and getting more bridges for years and years and years, but it had not been done. But like I said, when I was on transportation, we took care of at least that part, and we're working with Secretary Wilson to do more.
Thank you very much. And this question goes to Mr. Watson. As a councilman, you sponsored an ordinance to curb prostitution and drug dealing at hotels. Has that worked?
It worked in so much as the legislative branch can get it to work. I met with the district attorney's office. I took an ordinance that they had in Jefferson Parish, and took it immediately to the Hospitality Association, those people that have an association that run hotels and motels, because certainly the district attorney nor council know how to run a hotel. So I wanted to work with them, have them give me the information that they have as far as how we make a practical law moving forward. It not only, I worked with Councilwoman Green, brought her to the table, so she was part of sponsoring this. I think Barbara Freiberg also wanted to sponsor this, but it passed unanimously. It had the backing of where you have a hotel and motel association that comes up and says, we need these regulations. And when you have the district attorney so excited about what things are going to look like next year, the reason why it's been a failure is it took 16 months for someone that works for the Department of Public Works to make a simple application for a permit that asks for the name of the hotel, who owns the hotel, the address, who handles the insurance, and how many rooms do you have. Imagine the terrible things that could have happened to someone in a life of child sex trafficking in 16 months as we waited for this permit to even be created so people could even apply. So in that extent, I think as far as the legislative branch could take it, we took it exactly where we need to do. We passed it, and when it got to the executive branch, it just stopped.
I would tend to disagree with that because this
sure you would.
executive branch focuses on efficiency. As you well know, we have transformed permitting by 80% in this administration. In addition to that, we hired management consultants. All of our departments have been on an efficiency track and have made tremendous strides as it relates to efficiencies in government. So I would not adhere to what you've just said.
I'm sure those people in human trafficking.
All right,
move
Mayor
on.
Broome.
Thank you. Next question.
Next question for you.
Okay.
The St. George movement and the protests over police-related shootings that have been happening nationally kind of point towards a continuing racial divide in this parish as well. What would you do to bridge that?
Well, I've already started bridging that gap. You know, this moment that we are in, and many have described it as the post-George Floyd moment, it really has meaning for every community almost around America. And so as soon as that took place, I thought about how can we bring people together to come up with some solutions and recommendations for racism in our city and in our parish, something that we cannot ignore. It impacts every area of our community. And so the Commission on Racial Equity and Inclusion, made up of a diverse group of individuals from all walks of life, intergenerational, they are now preparing a recommendation around systemic racism issues that we deal with in Baton Rouge, disparities that we deal with, everything that impacts the quality of life for us as citizens around race. I firmly believe that there are more in our community who want to unite around shared goals and a shared vision than there are those who choose to be in a corner of racial hatred and promulgate racism. But we've got to talk about it, and for too long, we've ignored it, and it's impacted every area of our community.
Thank you. This question goes to Mr. Carter. You mentioned merging the Baton Rouge Police Department with the Sheriff's Office. Why would that be a good idea? How would it work?
Well, the main reason I'd like to look at it is for efficiency. It would save money. There's no doubt about it. But if you look at it practically, it may not be able to occur because the unions are involved with the police and the city, and the sheriff is not unionized. So to try to merge the two together is just something that I'm going to look at everything. I'm going to try to find out different ways that we can make the government more efficient. And so that was just a suggestion that I had, along with a number of other suggestions that I think that we need to do that would enable us to maximize our dollars. Again, like I've said before, we've got needs. It's not wants, it's needs, and that's a big difference. And we've got to try to find the dollars that are available in order for us to try to solve the major problems that we have in this city. So that was just one suggestion that I had, along with looking at BREC and looking at the Council on Aging and looking at the other entities that we need to figure out whether or not they're utilizing their dollars properly and sufficiently, because we need dollars to be able to do the things that are necessary to improve and move this parish forward.
Mr. Piazza, you know, there have been a lot of recent attempts by the Metro Council to pass what's being called a fairness ordinance, which would grant certain protections to LGBTQ individuals in the parish, but it never seems to come to fruition for a lot of different reasons. If you were elected mayor, would you advocate for such a measure in this parish?
Yeah, I think equal opportunity is something that is important, you know, worldwide, and we don't need to have any biases based on what someone's personal beliefs are. Do I necessarily am I going to lead the charge on it? If it's something that's important to the city of Baton Rouge and it's hindering us from progressing, sure, I'd be a part of that. But what's most important is ensuring that, you know, we opportunity is available for all in all parts of the community, no matter what their personal attributes are at home. And so in order to effectively do that, again, I think it kind of ties into the inequalities we were speaking of earlier, of the racial inequalities, and we've got to provide economic opportunities for our folks here in town. And I think part of why people leave our city continuously, besides the lack of career opportunities, is also because of what you speak to. There's not a lot of welcoming mentalities, a lot of divisiveness in the city because someone might have a different opinion than the folks that are in charge. And so that's what we get when we hire career politicians to lead the way. It's the old way of thinking. This is the 21st century, not the 20th century. We've got to shift how our mindsets are and the laws we pass and ensure that there's equality for everyone in our parish, no matter what they do. And so, again, I think it's important that we ensure that there's equal opportunity and that we provide the resources in all parts of the parishes to create development and opportunity so our folks can stay here and not leave because they're trying to get to a place of satisfaction.
Thank you, Mr. Piazza. And now to Mr. Guirard. You suggested major changes in the parish school system. What authority does the mayor actually have in that area?
Well, the mayor has very, very little direct authority, but the mayor has a bully pulpit. The mayor has connections to the city council, to the school board, to the legislature, to the governor. So that's why I'm a big advocate of fund it, don't run it. As a matter of fact, education, the tentacles of education influence everything. Every problem we have in Baton Rouge stems from education. Crime, traffic, you name it, business development, because we have a terrible, horrible public education system. We are half educating our children. You may have some good pockets in the magnets and the charters, but overall, fund it, don't run it. You divide all the money into one pot by every student, rich, medium class, poor, and you give them a credit stipend. The numbers we've run, it would be about $8,000. So they take that, and we utilize the free enterprise system, utilize capitalism. You would see a whirlwind of educational entrepreneurism in Baton Rouge that no one's ever seen anywhere in the country. For a change, we could be leaders in America instead of always being the followers. We could literally take our education system up to number one, up to the top, and people say, oh, that's crazy, that can't happen. But I believe it. If you believe it, if you conceive it and you believe it, you can achieve it. That's what Dale Brown taught me growing up. So I'm a believer in a new education system from the get-go. We call it fund it, don't run it. And go to fusetherouge.org if you want to see more details.
Thanks, sir.
All right, well, that's it for round two. Now on to round three. It's our lightning round, and we'll ask candidates lighter, non-policy questions, and we'll get a 1 or 2 sentence answer from them. And the first question, I believe, goes to Representative Marcelle.
And I'll ask it. These are brief. Ms. Marcelle, what's your proudest achievement?
My proudest achievement is getting the body cameras, passing that ordinance for the Baton Rouge City Police to all be outfitted with body cameras, because I believe that it did 2 things. It showed transparency with the police. It protected them as well as the citizens of Baton Rouge.
Councilman Watson, aside from a family member, who is one of your personal heroes?
Oh boy, my goodness, so much of it is family. My word, Thomas Sowell. I listen to a lot of Thomas Sowell on YouTube. I think he's a guy who came up in North Carolina, moved to Harlem, went through the university systems, and now is in the Hoover Institute out in Stanford. Just watching him develop his thought over time, go up against so many different people in debates and handle himself so stellarly. I've learned a whole lot from listening to Thomas Sowell.
Thank you. Mayor Broome, what are your hobbies?
Well, little known fact about Mayor Broome, some may know it, but I studied music for about 10 years growing up. So I love music. While I'm not tinkering on the piano right now, I plan to after I get past this election. But I love collecting music of all genres. I thoroughly enjoy spending time with my family, and when I have an opportunity, go to soccer games for my grandchildren.
I've heard you sing New Year's Eve at Red Stick Revelry.
Mr. Carter, if you were showing visitors around Baton Rouge, where's the first place you would take them?
Well, I wouldn't take them to any of the ditches or canals because they're in trouble right now, in my opinion. I mean, you go down Corporate, and when it rains, the water's this deep, and then you go into Ward's Creek, and the trash and stuff in the creek is bad. So I wouldn't take them there. I personally think that our state capitol is something that we should be proud of. I served in the legislature for 12 years, and I really enjoyed being in the legislature. And it's an unusual, unique capitol where there are only 2 capitals that are high in the entire country, and that's in Nebraska and in Baton Rouge. So I think that's something that we should be proud of, and I think I'd take a visitor to the capitol first.
Thank you, sir.
It
All
sounded
right.
like a rebuttal, but since this is
Are we going to have a rebuttal on that? No rebuttal?
Right.
Because it's lightning round? All right, to Mr. Piazza. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, that's a great question. Favorite movie? There's so many. When I was younger, I'd say Rush Hour is one of my favorite movies. I mean, it was just a very comical movie throughout, and I can't turn it on TV all the time, and I just can't help but laugh. And so I love something that can bring some laughter, if you will, during these trying times.
Use that, yeah.
Mr. Guirard, what book have you read recently besides the Bible?
Well, I read a number of books. The one I read most recently I'm reading is called The 100-Year Marathon. It's about China, and China's stepping into the world stage, and what can be done about stopping that whole problem. And then the other one was the one I referenced earlier, the Alex Berenson, the unreported and truths about COVID-19 and lockdowns. So those are 2. I like political books generally, so I read a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. Here's a question we like. Ms. Marcelle, if you were showing visitors around our capital city, where's the first place you would take them?
My house. No, seriously, I would have to say I would bring them downtown. I would bring them downtown, and that would include the old state capitol and the current state capitol. I love it downtown.
Councilman Watson, same question to you. What book have you read recently besides the Bible?
Boy, I read David Axelrod's his history of working with Barack Obama from being at the state level in Illinois all the way up to president, and that just to get behind the veil to look at that. But I'll tell you one book that really has stuck with me is Freakonomics. That's an incredible book to give you insight on so many different things that have happened in our society and looking at from a different lens as to what may or may not have caused some things, major things to happen in our society, rather than just what's put out as the message by the media or the talking heads.
Continue. Thank you, sir. Mayor, this is for you. What's your favorite movie?
Well, I used to have a favorite movie that I would always share, but I've changed it over the years as I've matured. And I would have to say, as I think about this moment in time and as the first woman elected in office, my favorite now is Harriet, about the abolitionist Harriet Tubman. I love that movie. I was encouraged by her strength and her courage, her tenacity.
Mr. Carter, aside from a family member, who's one of your personal heroes?
Well, I'm not a career politician. I've been involved in sports most of my life. I've had a tennis camp for kids and what have you. So a lot of sports figures, but I'm going to go a little bit further. Ronald Reagan is someone that I had a lot of admiration for. He was not a politician. He was an actor and did a great job. And I thought when he was elected President of the United States, he did a great job in turning our country around. So that would be probably my #1 hero.
All right, Mr. Piazza, what is your proudest achievement?
Oh, my proudest achievement, obviously, first and foremost, is marrying my beautiful wife, Jordan. That was awesome to accomplish that, because definitely I'll kick my coverage there. But secondly, it would be reopening the family business that my dad owned for 32 years, Phil's Oyster Bar and Seafood Restaurant. That was a unique moment. That was very special to my entire family.
Mr. Guirard, last question to you. What are your hobbies?
And you can learn a lot more. I'm not going to beat a dead nutria here, but go to fusetherouge.org and you can find out all kind of things about me. But I'm a big sports guy. That's why I wore a T-shirt today, because I want to be the Baton Rouge. I want to be the fitness mayor, and so that's my biggest thing. I run, I exercise, I play basketball every week when COVID lets us, and so that's my big thing. I love being physically fit, and that's kind of my favorite thing to do in my downtime.
Well, thank you, candidates. We're now down to our final few minutes to wind up our forum. I'm going to ask each candidate the same closing question. Why should we vote for you for Mayor-President? Start with you, Mr. Piazza.
You should vote for me for Mayor-President because, I'm not a career politician. I'm not someone that's tried to do the same thing over and over and expected different results. We've got folks that have been in government for over 3 decades, and that's alarming. We're in 21st century, and things have to change. The way that government was written in the 60s is not applicable today. Technology has advanced and things have changed, and we've got to move with those times. We also need to keep those our best and brightest from fleeing the city. As I mentioned earlier, our budget has surpassed $1 billion while our population has decreased. We don't need more taxes like the Move BR tax, which is an initiative to repair the roads and infrastructure. That's a tax. That's costing us more money. We need more taxpayers. We need folks that aren't just living outside the parish and driving into work causing more traffic congestion. We need people that want to live and embrace our parish. I'm a fiscally conservative Republican who understands what it's like to own a small business. Government is similar to business. You have top dollar revenue that we take in, and you have to get the best use of those funds. It's evident when you look at these studies that Baton Rouge is not officially using the funds. As I said earlier, we're ranking 138th out of 150 cities in quality of city services. This is not something that's new. It's been going on for a long time. We got to address education. We've got to ensure that our children have the resources they need, the technological devices permanently, not just during COVID, but that also gives the parent the choice of choosing where they want to put their kids to school. If they don't want to put them to school that they're determined based on where they live, if they have the technological resources and the right programs, they can choose to school and how they choose. And I think it's important to support our law enforcement. We need law and order in our city, in our parish, and it takes someone that is not in it and trying to live off the taxpayers' funding to ensure and understand how business works. As I said earlier, I'm the only candidate up here besides maybe Mr. Guirard who's really felt the effects of COVID personally because everyone else hasn't.
Thank you. Representative Marcelle, why should we vote for you for Mayor-President?
I think that you all should vote for me for Mayor-President because I'm a progressive leader. I lead by example. I don't wait for people to tell me what to do. I have a plan to stand up to crime, to offer traffic solutions, and also to support small and large businesses. I was one of the people who wrote the ordinance for DBE in Baton Rouge that still has not been implemented. I think that when you get a leader who knows how to work on both sides of the aisle to get things done, you have a great leader. I think that when you have a leader that is not afraid to say that we have a crime problem or face the issues, you got to first acknowledge that you have a problem before you can fix the problem. And I think that when you have a leader who will go out into the community when there is a flood and take supplies to those people and help them as best I could, I think you have a great leader. I think that when you have a leader who does not wait until election time to clean out canals and ditches, then you have a great leader. And those are the types of things that I would do for the city of Baton Rouge and the parish.
Mayor Broome, why should we vote for you for Mayor-President?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I am certainly thankful for the privilege that I've had over the past 4 years to be the Mayor-President for Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. Transformative leadership in trying times. That is what I have brought to this city and to this parish. We were a community in trauma in 2016. In 2017, I moved us forward by addressing those issues around police reform, by addressing flood mitigation and drainage issues. But I didn't just stop there. I passed the largest infrastructure project with the help of our citizens, Move EBR, transformative, not just for right now, but for decades to come. Mitigating traffic with light synchronization, 70 projects that are going to improve our roads and our transportation. And then beyond that, transformative leadership in trying times as we were impacted by a global pandemic, which our budgets weren't designed to handle. I didn't furlough any of our workers. I didn't lay anybody off, but I led this city through a healthy response, simultaneously working on our economy, keeping our projects going forward. Here we are at the end of 2020, and if it had not been for the global pandemic, our economy would remain strong, but our Move EBR 18 projects, economy strengthened.
Thank you very much.
Must be nice not to have let anyone off during the pandemic.
Okay.
Mr. Guirard?
Please go to fusetherouge.org and you can find the answer to that question and all these other important issues. But I'd like to leave everybody with the idea that Baton Rouge also needs a lot of optimism and positive thinking. And I'm gonna leave everybody with something Dale Brown, former LSU basketball coach, sent to me 45 years ago. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch, you won't. If you think you'll lose, you've lost. For out in the world you'll find success begins with a person's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you could ever win the prize. Think big and your deeds will grow. Think small and you'll fall behind. Think that you can and you will. It's all in the state of mind. For life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later the person who wins is the person who thinks he can. I not only think I can win, I know I can win, but I need the help of the people out there. So I need you to vote for E Eric Guirard so we can take Baton Rouge to the next level, so we can make Baton Rouge America's city. So go to fusetherouge.org, fusetherouge.org, E Eric Guirard, Mayor.
Councilman Watson?
Yes, ma'am.
Follow that. Why would you?
Yeah, I'll answer the question. For starters, what I've always done is I get out amongst the people who are working on things, whether it be the canals that Steve was talking about, whether it's working out with some folks that are filling potholes or things of that nature, going to visit people in the community that have problems. We have difficulty in getting response to people in a timely manner that put in 311 requests. But I'll tell you, what I've seen in working with the good people that work for this municipality is that they know how we can make positive change. Everyone's got an idea about how we can change things in our community and change things in the way that they work. But when you're out, whether it's cleaning up Little Misery Cemetery, going and digging up, ditches that need to drain in front of somebody's house that's taken on water, going and talking to the people who live on Cherokee that have to have sandbags in front of their house all the time, and instead of having the drainage taken care of, they get their road repaved, taking 2 inches of drainage capacity out of their street. I know a lot of the people who are out there doing the work. I know the folks that are in the different departments. I can get out there and work hand in hand and lead from the front and lead by example and never ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't be willing to go out and do myself.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, why should we vote for you for Mayor-President of Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish?
Well, a lot of people have asked, why did I get in the race? And I got in the race for 4 reasons. Evie, Carter, Julia, and Addie. Those are my 4 grandchildren. And I'm very concerned about the direction that the city's going. It seems like we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you want someone that's bold, that wants to make a change, and wants to make sure that the city is moving in the right direction, I'm the one that you need to to vote for. I want to unify the city. When I was in the legislature, they said it couldn't be done. We couldn't put the Capital Region legislative delegation together. We did. I worked across party lines. I worked with 9 parishes, and we attempted to prioritize what the needs were to improve the quality of life of all of the people in those 9 parishes. I'm very concerned about our crime. My granddaughter, they've got other people that are younger than my granddaughter, are being murdered in the streets. That's unacceptable. Flooding, when a house gets flooded, not once, not twice, but 3 times, I'm not going to allow that to occur. That's not acceptable to me either. Also, I'm concerned about our unemployment rate. So I'm the one that would be the one who has the courage to make the changes and do the things that are necessary to improve the quality of life of everyone in our city.
All right, well, I think that's it for today. We'd like to thank candidates for their participation, and of course the viewers for joining us today. And I'd like to thank Louisiana Public Broadcasting for partnering with us on this very important forum.
And remember, early voting begins October 16th, and there are many other issues that you should pay attention to this election season.
On behalf of the Advocate and Louisiana Public Broadcasting, we thank you for joining us today, and thank you again all for coming.
Have a good day.